Hi, everyone. So thank you so much for coming to our session today. Um, so far we have a few people in this event. Today our speakers will be me, Audrey, as well as our very amazing speaker, Andra. Um, so yeah, should we wait maybe like one more minute before we can probably wait another minute before we get started. But yeah, today we kind of have a lot prepared for you guys. So we had like a quick slideshow on kind of breaking down the basics of how to write like a research paper, especially a review paper that you could probably do by yourself at home without like really lab research or anything hands-on, since not a lot of high schoolers have access to a lab. Um, and then we can segue into a session where we can give you guys personalized advice. So if anyone has any specific questions, feel free to kind of jot it down or put it in the chat right now and we can address it later on. But yeah, we'll wait one more minute. Welcome everyone to our workshop, Writing a Research Paper and basically research tips for high schoolers. We hope that today's more informational workshop will allow you guys to get a better sense of, how to tackle that research paper and how to do research even at home, since it is kind of hard to get a lot of in-person opportunities. And later on, if you have other questions about how to write a research paper, or even just research, questions in general, like how to get an internship, or you have any like specific questions about your situation specifically, definitely put that in the chat, and then that's something we can answer as well. So yeah, hi, my name is Audrey, and yeah. So first, introductions. Andre, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, so thank you for having me here. I'm really happy to be at another one of your webinars. I'm the founder of Project Connect Forum, which is a website that helps students find extracurriculars in all fields of interest. And I'm also the founder of a nonprofit called Solace for Outdoor Workers that collects sunscreen for outdoor workers who are at a higher risk for melanoma. I did some research because I do work at a research internship at Scripps Institute. I did some research on outdoor workers and sort of coming up with ways to collect more healthcare data for them. And I also spent some time doing research at NYU for computer systems. So, for those of you who are sort of interested in that realm, I do have some tips.
That's amazing. Yeah, and Andra actually spoke at one of our previous research-related webinars, and hopefully this like what we start today can be a series, and hopefully we can continue to invite very amazing speakers like Andra to kind of give advice to you guys. And like I said, my name is Audrey. I founded Everything Starts Small, and actually, yes, Youth Empowerment Society. Which is hosting the webinar today, is like a small project under Yes, and mainly like a collaboration between various groups. And Project Connect is one of the groups that is a part of this. Yeah, I love, working with Andra. I've known her since I think this summer actually, but we've been able to work on a lot of things together, especially these like workshops. So it's been such an amazing experience. I also do research. I do research on kind of biofuels and bioenergy, which is a type of renewable energy from organic materials. And I do that at a wet lab in my city. I lead like a student research group, and we're actually going to present at the Southern California Undergraduate Conference next week, which is super exciting. I also do a university level research. I can't talk too much about that yet. Um, but yeah, so far I do also have research experience, and I'm glad to be able to be here to provide some of my thoughts and advice to you guys. Okay, so I guess I can start here, and then Andra, you can go to the next one after this, and we can alternate. So yeah, overall, like the outline of a research paper, of course, it can depend on each research paper, and that many research papers have like subsections, and it's really depending on, each research paper and what you want to cover. But like the general outline would be you would start with an abstract. Usually the abstract is something that you write at the very end, or it's something that's easier to write at the very end because you need to kind of have like a holistic kind of review of your entire study, so including like results and a small bit about like future directions. It's kind of like a synopsis of everything that you've looked into. Then we have the introduction, methodology, we have analysis and results. Then you would have your discussions and conclusion section, which is similar to the results, the conclusion. And then you would have like acknowledgements, which is optional, and references. And again, this is kind of like a general outline that we wanted to share with you guys today, but this could like depend. And sometimes actually, some journals want you to put the methodology section at the very end. So it really depends on like the order of things.
Yeah, so one of the main parts of a research paper is the introduction. It's really important because it's sort of what helps the readers, besides your abstract, really understand what you're doing, get some background information on what's going on, so that way they can sort of go into the details and specifics later on. So just make sure that you state the research question, make sure you have a very clear thesis, that way that they can understand what the rest of your paper is going to be about and sort of understand some of the details. Make sure to include context because, I mean, research is usually read by people who do have an interest in the field that you're writing about, but it's also read by others who might be beginners or might have some questions about that field. So you really need to make sure that people can understand that no matter what background they have and make sure to include objectives and the significance of your research in your introduction. So if people are sort of looking for something specific, they can make sure that what your paper is about aligns with what they're looking for. And that way, if it sort of doesn't, they didn't waste too much time sort of reading that paper. You want to make sure that things are efficient. And yeah, once again, just make sure that your thesis is strong. This is one of the strong points for a lot of papers. And if you have a weak thesis, generally the rest of your paper, you might be sort of struggling to write things like the conclusion because you're not quite sure what you're answering or what your hypothesis necessarily was. And you'll also be struggling to sort of make sure that your results back up what you were saying.
Yeah, I think that's like really good advice. Of course, like Andra said, you don't want to like just jump right into it and start, talking about your topic. You kind of like the graphic here, want to start with the bigger picture. So quick example is like if you're writing a research paper about like biofuels or carbon sequestration, which is something that I've done before, I would first start off with kind of the big idea of climate change and how that's, increasing the demand for new renewable energies or carbon sequestration, solutions. And then one key thing to remember to add, into your introduction is, why your paper is necessary. So of course, it can't just be like, oh, my paper is reviewing, it's a holistic review about X, Y, and Z. It's super important to also say like, is this specific review like lacking in the field right now? Or how is your review paper or research paper actually even necessary or bringing in new insight? So definitely make sure that you identify that research gap that your paper is kind of addressing.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a really good point.
Okay, so next we have methodology. So this is kind of like your area where you kind of talk about how you're doing your research. So if, for instance, if you're doing like research at a lab, then this part would be kind of like your protocol. Like you'd be talking about like, oh, first I autoclave my materials, I set up the media, et cetera, et cetera. But if this is like a review paper or paper that you're doing at home, if it's like more like dry lab focused, then you would definitely include like sources of data. For instance, if it's a review paper, include like the databases you're using or where you're getting your articles. So an example is, oh, I gathered information from government websites, used Google Scholar, etc. And especially definitely include like, do you have any keywords that you were looking into? So for instance, you can say that, oh, keywords which led to the selection of articles that are cited in this paper include X, Y, and Z, like climate change, bioenergy, microorganisms, or whatever your list of keywords is. And then what's also pretty important for a review paper, at least, is to mention like what are the requirements that the articles you reviewed had to pass. Like, do they have to be about this specific topic? And then also which one were excluded. So like what were the specific factors or items you were looking at to kind of collect this group of papers that you analyzed. And then again, kind of process of synthesis, and then tools and frameworks used. And also, if you aren't just doing like a review paper, if you're also doing like coding or incorporating some other type of elements, or for instance, if you're doing something about like human studies, where you're collecting data, from like people and you're having people fill out like forms and stuff like that, you'd have to talk about, how your forms are designed and why specifically, make sure everything's very intentional. And then also mention, every single, all the details and processes that go into making your kind of experiment as, yeah, as successful or not successful, but as accurate as possible to getting your final results.
So next up is a sort of analysis. So here you'll be presenting your findings by categories and subsections. I'd actually be happy to link the research paper that I developed from my time at NYU, so that way people can sort of see the way that I had organized things. My research was on isolating software systems for a easier or faster way of sort of processing data. And so it's a little bit of a more like high level overview so that people can understand it. And I think that would be a good example for sort of turning something that might sound more complex or sort of hard to understand because I didn't really understand what I was researching at first into something that others can also understand. And so I think the analysis is a really important aspect of that too, because it's sort of the part where the researcher is interpreting and explaining the data that was collected and identifying patterns. And I think that's the part where most people can sort of shine because a lot of people understand things when they're presented numbers in a way that's easily interpreted. They might not really know what's going on, but once you show them the data that sort of backs up your hypothesis, they might see that what you're stating actually has some merit and sort of better understand the importance of what you're talking about. So I think that the analysis could be a better way of sort of making sure that your point gets across.
Yeah, and I think adding on to that, and those are, super valid points. And yeah, thank you so much, Andra. Like, yeah, if you have, a link to the paper, I think it might help a lot of students who are here listening in. Um, yeah, kind of quickly adding on to that, an example is like if you're analyzing like various solutions and you're trying to see which one is more viable or trying to see like which one deserves more investment or research in, or which one has flaws in what area. And what might help is kind of having like a framework that you make. So for instance, you're going to be analyzing two things, about their like number one, like economic viability, and number two, kind of like research that's been done, or like flaws, or like having these various categories that you can, that you can use to specifically compare, rather than just like comparing like various things. Because if you're trying to compare things, you obviously can't compare like oranges to apples. So it's super important to kind of make those subsections or categories to really break down your analysis. Um, Another thing that might help at this section, especially this is a section where you can add like graphs, bar graphs or any like graphs to better help your audience like interpret like the various numbers. And something that might help in this area specifically is if you're analyzing like two things, for instance, to try to make it, as equal as possible, which is similar to the idea of having these categories. So when you analyze something, you kind of want to make sure that if possible, I know it's also not possible sometimes, because sometimes the area that you're researching in doesn't have a lot of information or research on it, so it's not like you have like an abundance of information you're working with. But if possible, kind of using similar units, or basically, yeah, using like similar things to compare the two would probably help the best or the most. Yes. And then next we have results. So this is the place where you kind of summarize your findings. This is also a place where you kind of reiterate and restate your research question, and basically come back to this idea of why your research was important or is important in the first place. Kind of mentioning your hypothesis, and then relating to whether your results and the data that you've collected and your analysis has back that up, or has that given you a new finding or a new insight, or has it disagreed with what you originally thought. There's also a place where you can emphasize contributions to the field to again kind of like broaden that, your findings, to show everyone how that is significant or how that can be applied.
And so next up is a discussions. This is sort of one of the last parts of writing your paper. So you've already reviewed all of the previous information. So here you're sort of talking about what happened in your paper overall, if you had overcome any challenges. So for example, what we did was mainly running programs and code. And so we sort of had some issues with the data that we were getting. It wasn't necessarily what we expected. And so I just made sure to mention that in my discussion, also mentioning that some of our data wasn't necessarily aligning with our hypothesis, while other ones did, and sort of why we believe that that happened throughout the paper. And just make sure to also mention future directions. So why your research is important, again, sort of iterating what was in the introduction, and how this can build off on other papers. So how people who are reading your paper might be able to branch off or maybe come up with their own research based off of the information that you've provided. And yeah, just be sure to acknowledge your limitations. That's one of the most important aspects of doing research. A lot of people sort of don't want to because we don't want to sort of lean on our failures, but we do need to acknowledge them, especially for those who are interested in your paper and are building up their knowledge on a certain topic based off of the information that you're providing them. So it's important to make sure that everything you are providing them is crystal clear and that you're sort of acknowledging the challenges that you had overcome with this research so they can take that into consideration when doing their own.
Yeah, and then kind of the last section, we actually added the abstract slide at the very end. But then, like I previously mentioned, this is something that's in the beginning of your paper, but we decided to add it at the end since that's kind of sometimes the easiest way to tackle your abstract. It's like after you write everything else, then you kind of know, oh, you have this very short paragraph. It's usually less than 250 words. It's supposed to be concise, brief, straight to the point. And it's something that people can read and exactly know what is going on in your research paper, and this is to help also people to understand like do they want to fully dive into reading your entire paper, um, whether it's relevant to whatever they're trying to find. So here it's kind of a summary of key points. Make sure to make it brief and concise, and then usually can help to write it last because that's when you have all your results and analysis and everything has been done. So for instance, an abstract kind of format would be kind of like you can have a few sentences like summarizing your introduction and then go into talking about, why your paper is important or what your paper does. And then you would definitely have to include your results. So for instance, through analysis, you observed or you identified that solution X was the best among all the ones that you were comparing. Then that would be something that you would include into your abstract so that people can know, exactly what your findings were. And then at the very end, you can include like a sentence or something about future directions, so that people can have this more holistic idea of what your paper is about. And then at the end, you can have an acknowledgments section. That's totally optional. And so for instance, if you have like a research mentor that you'd like to acknowledge, that's kind of like a place that you would put that in. But otherwise, sometimes you don't have to have that section either. Okay, so I think that was, pretty straight to the point. Hopefully that was, pretty clear. And I noticed while we were going through it, there's one of the slides that got a little bit mixed up. So I'll definitely make sure to, make all of that, fix that slide. And then I can also share this slide with you guys in case anybody wanted to kind of go back to review the specific information without, watching the entire recording. But yeah, I guess now we're in our questions and specific advice section. So I'm going to quickly stop my screen share. And hopefully you guys found that somewhat, helpful. Again, that's not like super like in depth or anything like that. It's just to really give like a basic kind of beginner overview of how you can tackle a research paper. Um, so yeah, and now if you have any specific questions, you can put that into the chat. Um, Oh, and I do see some people put things in the chat, so we can quickly look through that right now.
And I just want to touch on somebody's question about when working with the university for research, do they publish it? So we did have to complete well, at least for me, because I did a summer research program at NYU, and at NYU, so we did have to produce a paper. They didn't necessarily publish it for us. We did have the option of publishing it. I decided not to because the process is very lengthy, and I did it more for personal growth since I had already just been accepted into the program, and that for me was enough. But when you do publish it, I do want to share some resources, some high school journals that are exactly like the publishing process, and they have just as much merit because they do give the same process to everybody, and it does take months. I've heard from a lot of people, the process is very long.
Yeah, I think it really also depends, like, it definitely depends, like, what level of research you're trying to do. Of course, if you're trying to, publish in a smaller, maybe more high school friendly journal, I think the publishing time, depending on, how fast you work, of course,
Yeah.
um, it could be like 2 months. It could be really quick. It really depends on the journal that you choose. But if you choose like actually like more competitive journal, ones that you're, competing, or like ones that, are really, really rigorous, and, ones that, have like really, really cutting edge research, I definitely think the process is going to be a lot more, strict, and it's probably going to take a much longer time. Sometimes, after you submit your paper, maybe they'll send it back with a letter of, it's like this PDF, and they tell you what they want to fix with your paper. So, when you first send it in, it could be rejected, accepted, or usually it could be accepted with revisions. And then it would be like, oh, your introduction is lacking, etc., XYZ. And then you would have to, go back, fix it, and then you would have to write a letter back like, oh, I addressed this comment by incorporating XYZ. And then you'd have to send it back, and if they accept that, then there's like this kind of process that you go through of like revisions to publish. That's usually the most like typical thing that happens, I would say. Um, I'm
Yeah, I'm a senior, so for me, I didn't really want to go through that process and then yeah, go through all these college applications. So for me, the process felt a little bit different, but if I were a junior or if I had more time, I would 100% have tried to publish my research. So I would recommend if you do have the time, you should really put in the effort to try, but uh I got a little busy.
Yeah, I totally get that. Um, and then I think someone mentioned, do we really need to use a specific, um, less outdated format for writing our manuscripts? My school has a specific format that can identify students/staff from our school. Does anyone want to clarify a little bit on that? Do you mean like, what does it mean to identify students/staff from our school? But I think I can try to answer this question, and then Audrey, you can also try to answer it. But if whoever, I think it's Angela, if you wanted to clarify more in, what you mean, and if you feel like we're not really answering your question well, definitely feel free to put more in the chat. I would say that, of course, like the general format is, dependent, or like the subsections that you have is pretty dependent. But I would say like the general format, if you want to publish a research paper, um, is pretty standard. Like it's pretty like introduction, methodology, and even if they swap the order, it's usually all the same sections. Something that might help is if you have a specific journal you're looking for to publish in, even if it's a high school related journal, if you go to their journal and then if you go to their submission requirements, they'll usually have an exact step by step or like outline of what they want. Like they'll have introduction section, methodology, then this and that. They'll tell you like exactly what sections they want from you, to better help guide it if you have, a research paper or a research journal that you're thinking of, submitting to.
Yeah, I would recommend just erring on the side of caution because if you're trying to submit it for publication, a lot of them might be a little bit picky onto like how exactly they want their paper. So just sort of review how they necessarily have their format and try to adapt because like she said, they do sometimes try to have you revise it afterwards, and that process can also make it longer than necessary. So try your best to sort of adhere to what they specifically ask for, um, just so that the process can go by a little faster.
Yeah. Um, And yeah, thank you. Somebody mentioned that they're not in high school anymore, but they're hoping to use like these resources even when they're in college. Yeah, totally. Like if there's anything specific also that, any specific resource that you're looking for, definitely put into the chat and we can see, how we can best, provide that for you. Um, and then someone mentioned, is it, how do we look for internships related to research? Is it possible to get paid? So I do know there are some programs I believe that you can get paid, but those are pretty competitive. So at least that's what my interpretation of it is, because usually even very competitive programs, you need to pay, not, even very competitive programs that are really prestigious that many colleges might look for, or are at the more prestigious end of the various summer programs or research programs. Usually you still have to like pay. There's some that you don't need to pay, but I don't know many where they actually pay you. But that said, I think that I've heard of some before, but they're just not that many. And usually I'm guessing if you do get paid, it probably is a pretty tough position to get into, since I know there are a lot of they're probably very qualified people who also are trying to apply for that position. Um, I think we actually hosted a kind of webinar focused on how to get research internships.
Yeah.
I think it was like last month or something like that. So if you guys are interested, you guys can watch the recording for that. There's like timestamps and everything. Um, but yeah, Andrea, would you like to speak a little bit about how to get yeah, how to get various opportunities and stuff like that?
Yeah, so my internship is actually, well, I'm a research intern and it's actually paid, but it wasn't paid originally. So I would say don't go into it with like a paid mindset. A lot of these people, it does sort of sometimes feel like they're doing you a favor by letting you work with them and sort of get that experience because experience itself is very valuable, especially to high school students, since places are mainly looking for undergraduate students who need the research experience. So it will be sort of difficult to find paid opportunities, but typically, if you sort of find a way to stand out or you try to extend your internship, they might consider paying you. That's what happened to me. I extended it for a few months and they offered to pay me based off of a grant that they got. But it is, I feel, rare to find places that explicitly say that they do pay you to do research. So, I'm not quite well versed on that, but I know that there's the NASA research internship, which I'm not sure if it's paid or not, but I'm sure that you don't have to pay to engage in it, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. And Andrea, that's super cool. But yeah, I definitely think like if you get any opportunity, like Andrea had mentioned, the main thing is really like learning, especially if you're a high schooler, you definitely do not know more than the researchers that are already there. It's more like you are kind of bringing your enthusiasm and passion, which you definitely should have if you're actually serious about research, to really be genuine, to, to look into this field and really try your best to contribute in this field. So really bringing in that interest, I think, is um, what you're bringing to the table. Whereas like the researchers, they already have more knowledge than you. So yeah, like she said, I think typically there aren't too many opportunities where they pay you. And then if there is a possibility, the main thing isn't to have a mindset where like, oh, I'm doing this just to get paid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, I'll share the research program because I see that you're in grade 11, which was the grade that I applied to the NYU GSTEM program. You do have to pay, but there is a scholarship that allows you to go there almost for free. I was able to go for free. So I can share that. And if you'd like to apply, you can also consider that because um, I got to go to New York and it was such an amazing experience that I would have never had the opportunity to do besides doing this research program. So it's also just a way to sort of get new experiences and uh, meet new people, like-minded people, which is a really valuable thing.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just looking through like the chat, but yes, you guys should definitely check out the link that Andra just shared, and I know she also shared a link to her paper, which is super amazing. Also, yeah, somebody asked like working with the, I know Andra, you already mentioned like the answer to this, like university for research, do they publish it? So I think it really depends. Like I said, I'm also kind of doing university level research at the moment. But since I think it really depends. Like, maybe they will be working on a research paper, but I can't guarantee that your name will be on the paper. If you're working with an actual professor and you're at their lab, especially if you're a high schooler, I don't think there's a guarantee that your name will be on the paper. It's mainly you being there to be able to learn, observe, and like I said, or like Andra had mentioned, they're kind of already doing you a favor of, you know, being willing to guide you as like a high schooler, as somebody who's less experienced. It's kind of like, and they don't, they're not forced to do it. They don't have to do it either. So I would say if it's something that um it's through like a program at a university, I think like Andra said, they don't help you publish it, but maybe by the end of that competitive program, you'll have a paper to publish, and that's something that you have to do yourself. And then I think if it's an opportunity you've gotten through reaching out, and then yeah, and then maybe you're helping a professor with their actual research, like at the university. I think, I do know our previous speaker, another very amazing researcher, Dara. She is actually working with, I think, researchers at Harvard and MIT, and then her name is on that paper, and she's also a high schooler, but I think that's really not guaranteed, and it really, really depends on the situation. But yeah, I think, yeah, going into like these university level research, like I think the main thing is not to have your name on the paper, it's mainly to really be genuine and really, you know, really want to be there and learn and do your best.
Yeah, I mean, when you go to college, you'll have a lot more research opportunities and you'll have a higher chance of being published in a paper then. But I think at the moment, like for me, my research internship, I do help them with the lit reviews and sort of talk about research and sort of try to spark new ideas. But I wouldn't necessarily expect to be sort of having my name on the paper because I sort of am just like there to help them out and get experience. And I think that's definitely one of the more valuable things about making a research paper. It's the experience you get, not necessarily having the title of publishing a paper. Because I mean, I know a lot of people are doing it for college applications, and I think that getting that publication does feel really good and it sounds good, but also the experience that you get, just like writing a paper and having the discipline to do all that research because it takes a long time and be organized. Those are different traits that you get that people are really looking for that will help you more than just getting that publication title.
Yeah, exactly. Someone mentioned, how can we make our research and like the research journal that they submit to stand out in competitive forums? I don't want to butcher the name, THURJ. I'm actually not very familiar with that. Andra, do you know anything about that?
I don't know. So I can look into that right now, but other competitive sort of publication places for high school students, I listed in a link above. That is also an option, especially for, I'm not quite sure if this necessarily is a high school program, the journal that you listed, but if it's not, I would recommend first looking at some high school journals that might sort of guide you into the process easier. And then if you do get published there, you can probably look into getting published in other journals like that one, but I'm not quite sure about that journal specifically.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and it's I guess it's a Harvard undergraduate research journal. I am not specifically too like familiar with this. I don't know if it's around a specific topic or if it's just accepts all types of research, um but yeah, I mean, I think this seems like a pretty good place to submit. Of course, like I know there's like kind of this idea that you want to make your paper stand out and submit to somewhere where that's more competitive. I believe like submitting to some place that's competitive, that's already making your research stand out. And but even if you submit to a place that's not necessarily too competitive, I think that is still completely fine. I think it's kind of like the um, process of like doing research, especially if you're doing research by yourself at home or doing like a review paper and then submitting it, that really shows kind of your commitment to, um, you know, delve into this topic and then share it with your community to, better the fields or, present your insights and stuff like that. And so yeah, I think that's like kind of what I have to say for that question. Specifically for research, if you have like a research mentor or if you're part of a program, usually you can apply to science conferences, and that can also help kind of your I would say that definitely can help with your research. So for instance, I'm going to a science conference that I had to apply to going next, it's in LA. It's yeah, next weekend. Um, they have like oral talks, or you can do like a poster, but I know that's not something you can apply to by yourself. So you can't be doing, it's not something you can do by yourself at home and then do it only. You have to have like a mentor or be affiliated with an institution. So if you are, I definitely recommend applying to those, because that's a place where you can kind of be in a really rigorous environment. People who are going to those conferences are, really into research, especially because people who like come to even watch, they have to pay. So it's not like just like general, usually it's not just like general like people, like audience that doesn't really know about, science. It's probably a very science concentrated community. So I definitely think, going to those conferences, or even if you're not presenting, going to those conferences to kind of listen in, to watch people's conferences, can help kind of boost your own quality of your research and, better learn from other people as well.
And I just wanted to reply to one of the questions about the program. Um, you when you apply to the program, it asks you automatically if you'd like to be considered for the scholarship, because you do have to write an additional essay. So you could check that out when the applications open, which I believe is in February or March.
Yeah, but yeah, sorry, I'm just reading through the through the chat.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
yeah, I think also someone mentioned I'm thinking about doing research on herbal medicine. Try to research professors, but you haven't gotten like a response yet. Okay. So I do recommend going possibly, to watch. So we have all our workshops and webinars recorded and then uploaded on YouTube with, notes and then also timestamps. So you don't have to watch the whole thing to find the section that you want. You can basically, our very amazing editor and, the one that records everything, Kathleen, who's also in this meeting right now, she basically kind of looks through the whole thing and kind of section it off very easily. So you can just hover over like the video and find the timestamps or go to the section that you want. But we have very specific and really helpful tips to getting like internships or reaching out on a university level. But I think, one thing is you definitely have to be persistent. So I totally understand like you're not getting any responses. I would say don't let that stop you from kind of looking into it yourself. You could still do a possible like review research paper, and that could be something that you work on yourself. And if you have those credentials already, like if you have already a bit of experience, that's something that might help when you send your resume to ask for some possible opportunities. But I would say definitely it's a really tedious process, like kind of cold emailing, reaching out. So for instance, like I was doing that for like a good few months. Like I probably have sent out I've sent out probably, I don't even know how many, but a lot of emails. And all of these emails, at least for me, I didn't use AI to write them or anything. Like everything was like handwritten and very personalized. So it was a really, really tedious experience. So I totally understand kind of like what you're going through. Like you're kind of writing all these emails, but some people don't respond, which is totally understandable since they're not obligated to give us any opportunities, and they're not obligated to respond either. And these professors are probably super, super busy and handling and teaching classes and doing their own thing as well. But I think, since that type of opportunity is a little bit harder to get, I would say definitely still continue to reach out. But then don't let that really stop you from doing it yourself. Like you can still do a review paper by yourself at home and then submit to like a high school journal. And that could also be something that you like when you ask for opportunities or when you reach out, you can say like, oh, I wrote this great paper, and you can like link it or something. I think that might be able to help show that you're genuinely interested in this topic. I think something that our previous webinar was talking about was using your LinkedIn profile to your advantage. So one of our very, very amazing speakers, she published a a book on health. So she does cancer research. She's one of our speakers in the past, but unfortunately she couldn't be here with us today, but possibly in the future because we're all kind of like a part of the same team, kind of like same team as in like for Youth Empowerment Society. Um, but yes, and so she mentioned, Dar, she mentioned that, using your LinkedIn profile, I don't know if you guys have a LinkedIn profile, but some people have it just to, to have it, like they just have it to like look at other people's profiles, or they just have it to display like their resume without really doing anything. And if you're just doing that, I don't think there's really too much value of having a LinkedIn profile. But what's really important when you have a profile is to display kind of your work, your passion, and that allows you to have connections to other types of professionals in the area. So, for instance, like for Dara, who's a friend of ours, um, um, she basically reached out. She actually reached out for opportunities via LinkedIn. And then that was also pretty useful for her because she said that then the professors or whoever she's reaching out to could look at her profile, her whole resume that was already on LinkedIn, look at the various posts that she makes because some like people can, you can put posts and do like, oh, I have this blog, or it's just a lot easier for people to understand who you are as a person to get a more holistic perspective. But other than that, cold emailing also really works. We have a lot of other, tips in our other recording, like I previously mentioned. But I would say, yeah, definitely continue to reach out. Um, and yeah, and I would definitely recommend maybe applying to some programs. If you're not able to get any, opportunities through cold emailing, because that's pretty hard, definitely like apply to some summer programs. And I think, like Andra said, you can apply to get the kind of like various financial aid if you need it, and if it's like in person.
Yeah, and I just wanted to reiterate one more time. I think that previous video that's posted on YouTube would be extremely helpful in answering these questions, just because it's specifically geared towards finding research opportunities as opposed to sort of publishing research papers. So we really do go into more depth over there. But I think that the LinkedIn idea that she had mentioned is very smart because as opposed to replying to an email where they probably get tens of maybe hundreds of emails a week. It sort of helps you stand out a bit because you have your resume right there. They don't have to click any additional links, and sort of keeping it concise and sort of being able to confirm that you are interested in their research. I think that on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people who do post about research. I mean, I think when I scroll through my feed, I see a lot of people talking about that. So I'm sure that as you build your connections with people who sort of have that same field of interest as you do, you'll be able to sort of see what kind of research they're doing, if they know any professors, and sort of being able to utilize your connections more because cold emailing is extremely hard, and eventually you feel like you sort of run out of places, at least in person, for you to reach out to. So I think that LinkedIn is definitely one of the best ways for you to go ahead and do that. But we do also talk about some more opportunities in that Zoom.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I was just gonna say I haven't actually yet reached out through LinkedIn. I've also still been doing it kind of the more traditional way through kind of cold emailing professors that I really want to, learn more from. I would say definitely make sure if you're reaching out, make sure your email really reflects, who you are as a person. Don't just be like, oh, I want to contribute to your research. I've done X, Y, and Z. Like really go into like you're truly passionate about. Of course, like if you're not, don't lie about it. But if you're reaching out to have these opportunities, I think you should definitely be genuinely interested and genuinely passionate. And it's that you really have to show that you're really willing to, make time for this. Like it's not something like you don't want to make it sound like, oh, I'll do this and I'm available on Sunday or something. Like you have to really show how passionate you are, how willing you're willing, how much you're willing to commit. Because, again, if they do allow you to have any sort of opportunity or even just to listen in on their meetings and stuff like that, that is kind of something they are really generous for, allowing you to learn from them. Um, there's actually something that you were saying, Andra, that made me think of something, but I literally have the memory of like a goldfish, so I no longer remember what I was about to say. But yeah, if I think about it, if I remember, I'll definitely. It was something about Oh, yes, I remember it now. So basically, talking about LinkedIn. So even though I have never reached out or asked for any opportunities via LinkedIn before, I would definitely say LinkedIn is pretty important, especially to grow your connections. And this could just be, if you have an organization and you're trying to grow your organization, if you're just trying to learn from people, like LinkedIn, for instance. There was a another, very she's such an amazing individual, but she does research on flexible solar panels or like solar cells that are like really really thin and flexible. Like she's this amazing individual, and then I'm super inspired by her. I think it was 2 or 1 year ago. I basically reached out, kind of introduced myself, and I asked like I would love to learn more from you. Would it be possible for me, for us to set up a chat, or, I would just love to learn more from you in general. And, a lot of people are super nice. Like she was totally willing to jump on a call and then talk to me about her research, about what her tips are, how she got into it. And that, honestly helped me, gain a better idea of, what I want to do and how I want to go moving forward, because I know this research, can be, this process can be tedious and sometimes it's hard to get opportunities and you could feel lost sometimes. So I definitely think even reaching out and talking to professionals is something that you can leverage to, better your own research, to, learn from other people, which I think is super valuable. Another example is of how, you can use LinkedIn for your research is, I do have a LinkedIn account and I, post not all, but, most of my achievements on there. And I do share about, my what I learn and everything like that. And actually, I think it was actually when I first started my profile in my freshman year of high school. It was that summer, like freshman to my sophomore year, I believe, when I first started my profile. Actually, a professor from Yale actually texted me and was like, "Oh, I love your work. It's great that we were able to connect." And it wasn't like, "Oh, I texted him first or anything." It was like, I think this really shows that, even though, and I didn't, it wasn't like I got an opportunity out of that or anything, but I think it really shows having, showing how genuinely you're interested in it, even if you don't have a bunch of, if you even if you don't have like this award or like you won ISEF or something like that, if you just really if you even just like show that you're passionate, show that you're genuine on your LinkedIn profile, if you do like weekly posts on how your information on, the various topics you're interested in, that really allows you to gain connections. You can connect with people and people can see really how, passionate you are. And then there you can possibly gain really valuable relationships with people.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on what you said about reaching out to others. A lot of people really are nice. Like you do not need to be scared about reaching out, especially to people who really inspire you or you'd like to learn more about what they're doing. A lot of people like really love to help others out, especially when it's something like seeing that you're interested in the same thing as them. So don't be scared. A lot of the people in this research community are really nice and always looking to help other people. So always take that risk. And I mean, the worst thing that they could do is not respond. And you can just reach out to more people, and eventually you're bound to find somebody who's also willing to help you.
Yeah. And I think the last main question we have in the chat, and I think, our everything's going based on like the time like super well. So I think the last question was, are there any journals you're aware of that doesn't have a maximum age limit? I'm a college freshman and I didn't have opportunities in high school. Um, hmm, I would say you could definitely try to submit to journals that, are basically like general scientific journals that aren't as competitive. Like, Nature is super competitive. Like, there's a lot of like big name journals out there that are probably extremely rigorous. But there are also smaller journals that I think you can find by yourself that, probably could be a little bit more feasible, but probably are still, pretty rigorous because it is, true and real science. Um, I hmm. I do know there are like journals that are geared for high schoolers, like, but I think we can definitely look into that more. I don't know if I don't know if college freshmen can also apply to those, but let's see.
And really quickly, I just want to suggest before you sort of go into publishing or thinking about doing your own research, I would suggest sort of getting the feel through applying for internships for undergraduate or college students because I have seen that there is a lot of opportunities for people in college as well. That way you can sort of get the feel of the field of research and sort of see what the process is like. And then eventually you might go on to get a mentor who's interested in helping you later on in publishing your own research. So trying to get that connection and get deeper into the field first might help you out, as opposed to sort of jumping straight into the publishing.
And that actually reminds me of like a tip. I guess like especially for high schoolers. So if you apply to like a summer program, even if it's not a crazy, crazy competitive one, like even if it's just like one at a university and that's not like crazy competitive or anything, I would definitely recommend going. And this isn't from my own experience. I did apply to some research programs. I remember for my freshman and sophomore year, it was in person and I did get in, but I actually didn't end up going for some other reasons. But I definitely recommend if you get into something, you should definitely go. Because actually from my friends, one of my friends, he yeah, he had this program that he went to, and he was able to, grow a really good connection with the professor there or whoever was teaching the program, and he was actually able to have like a longer term relationship with this professor and actually be able to that was able to kind of I feel like really help him get into like the research aspect at the university level.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because my internship, I applied my sophomore year. It was the summer after my sophomore year that I did it. It's at Scripps Research, and I don't think it's very well known, but they're sort of connected to UC San Diego. But it wasn't really like RSI or anything at MIT or whatever. But I applied because I wanted to get that experience, and I'm still working there today. My mentor, she transferred me to a paid intern. She gives me like a lot of opportunities, and she even let me go to a conference in San Diego where I could meet everybody. Um, and I just have built the best relationship with her. She wrote my letter of recommendation for the summer program that I applied to for my college applications. She's been extremely supportive, and especially for like award nominations. And also, I found out later on that this sort of research opportunity was being held at places like Yale, Stanford, Columbia, I think, USC. So I applied not really knowing much about it and thinking that it was a small program, but don't ever judge a book by its cover because these programs can also be extremely helpful. And, it's sort of easier to start off with something like that as opposed to sort of trying to jump right into something else.
Yeah. And then um, I do see, I see. So someone mentioned that, um, starting to reply and then kept getting, oh, okay. No, no worries. I totally understand. Sometimes like Zoom can be kind of weird. Um, and I know you've said you've also used your LinkedIn. So that is quite interesting. I haven't used my LinkedIn before, so I actually don't personally know how that works. Um, hmm. I would say maybe think about getting some experience first. But of course, don't be too surprised that, a lot of professors don't respond. It is, really, really difficult. And I would say definitely don't feel like too discouraged because like for me, I've been cold emailing like for months. Like for a long time because I was at a stage where I felt like I really wanted to go into a more rigorous environment. I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to learn from people. That were really, really making impact, but I didn't know where to get that type of opportunity. And I did feel at some point of my, I would say like my research kind of like journey a little bit stagnant. And I was really trying to I wanted to go to a new environment to really push myself and really, learn the best I can to, do my best. So I totally understand, how you might feel like you might also feel stagnant. I'm not quite sure. But, even if you do, I would say definitely don't give up. Um, there isn't really like a secret like sauce or like secret key to how to get internship from a of course you can't like force these professors as well because they are really 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 busy and yeah, so I think definitely just keep trying. Maybe something that might help again is really maybe you're working on your resume or having some more experience before, and kind of like we previously mentioned, maybe possibly applying to a smaller summer program, applying to some smaller summer program in the United States, and then maybe you can get a long-term relationship through working with the mentors there. Um, okay. No, I see that totally I totally understand what you mean. Um, hmm. I think what might help, I mean, you don't necessarily, to bolster your experience, you don't necessarily have to do that through a program, though that definitely helps. You can also do that on your own and do your own like experiment. Like, oh, for instance, like if you're interested in medical stuff, like you could try to do like a medical like competition or a project. Like you can do a project on your own, I would say. Like for instance, how I first started my kind of I would say like science resume was I worked on this project where I built a solution. Like it was like a project over like a whole year. Like so it was a pretty big project. Like I had to research, design, interview engineers, create a solution, use a 3D printer, like prototype, etc. And then I was able to win the competition. Like I was able to win like first place nationally. So definitely like you could do like competitions, or you can really just do a project yourself. Like even if I think even if I didn't apply to do that competition, if you just do it by yourself, if you research by yourself, that also shows a lot about your genuine interest. You could start a blog, and then again, yeah, totally. Tutorials, research ideas. That actually really segues into kind of the last part about what I wanted to share. So, the Youth Empowerment Society, we actually wanted to host basically a series, and it's going to be like a program. It's something that I think, it could be potentially very helpful. And even if it's just a few people who are interested, like, 5 people or so, even if it's a small group, if I think if you're interested, definitely join in this like series. But it's something that we want to it's kind of like a workshop series where people can work on their research papers. We can talk more about, samples of a research paper. We can share, each person brainstorm their personal paper. Like we can all like see how we can work with you, I guess like better and more closely to help you with that. So I would say definitely if you're interested, definitely join our Discord community, because that's where we post our announcements and have all the plans there. And then if anyone has any like requests of like topics they want to hear more about or things they want to learn, that's also the place to go. And you can put that in the chat, and that's something we can note down. Actually, we can make like a webinar or like workshop like this based on what you're interested in as well. Um, but yeah, we do plan on doing a series where we can go more into like how do you write a research paper, what are the exact steps, and then you can share like a Google Doc with some of us, and it could be like I don't know, it could be like some sort of series where we can help you brainstorm, like look at what you have, work on you a little bit closer. Um, oh, I see. I think I can, that's interesting. Let me think. Usually it's mostly Discord. I think maybe if you could create a Discord account and then join, I think that might be the best because it is like a community, and I think there's about like 170 people in there at the moment. Wait, actually, or yeah, actually completely forgot what, but basically we are a community with a group of, very amazing individuals, and basically that's where all our announcements are. That's also a place where you can request for things, you can chat with people, ask other people for their experience as well. That's also a place where you can get new opportunities. There's an like opportunity section where people can post about their own opportunities. Um, if you're I don't know if this is necessarily the same, but if you're interested in like medical stuff, we do have one of our other friends who also does research. She does research at Harvard, and it's I think wet lab and dry lab, but she's been doing I think wet lab for a year, I think. But basically, she's in the Chai Lab, which does like cancer research at Harvard. Her name is Sabrina, and she's actually leading a research project, I believe. And I think it's on neuroscience. She does a lot of medical stuff. If you're interested, definitely join the Discord, and then you can like at us to reach out to her or something because I think she's kind of open to seeing who would like to be a part of that. And she also is like super amazing to learn from. So if that's something you're interested in, that might be able to help give you a little bit more experience. Um, but yeah, and so overall, I think that I guess like concludes our research section or session today. Thank you guys so much for joining. And like I said, um, we will be having kind of like a more in-depth, we'll be having like a more in-depth series on like breaking parts of the paper down. And it's going to be less like us talking to you, but probably more like if it's a smaller group, you guys can talk about, oh, what type of paper you want to write. And that's something that we can set like that hour. It's something that we can probably help you with, and people can brainstorm, collaborate together. So I think it's going to be a really good type of kind of close-knit program and series. So if you're interested in that, definitely join the Discord invite. Kathleen, put it in the chat. I'm going to put it in the chat again. Um, Here it is again. Definitely join and be a part of the community. We also have like a thing where you can actually get volunteer hours for giving advice to other people because we are powered or supported by a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. Everything starts small. And then another last thing I want to add also is like Andra mentioned, she is the founder of Project Connect. It's a website that has like really, really amazing resources, not just research focused, but also like with organizations and various other things. So I definitely recommend checking out her website. She has like a lot of users and she's been able to help so many high schoolers and middle schoolers. So I definitely recommend checking out kind of her platform there. Um,
Really quickly, I just want to say, like, when I did my research internship, I became very interested in how outdoor workers were affected by UV rays and how they were more likely to get melanoma. And that was sort of the starting point for me to start my nonprofit. So also engaging in these research internships or opportunities, even if you're not going to end up publishing a paper, you grow in so many different ways and you find the things that you're interested in and maybe not interested in. So I would 100% recommend just trying to get involved as much as you can because I had so much growth. I met an amazing mentor. I started an organization. I met so many amazing people. So yeah, like try your best to get involved and really take any opportunity that you can get.
Yeah, that is really, really amazing. Talking to people like Andra really, I feel like really inspires me as well. So hopefully you guys, had a pretty good time this, over the course of this hour. Again, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out like on LinkedIn, on Discord. Feel free to, stay connected and we're probably like planning on having a series. So if you're interested, definitely, follow us on social media or at least join the Discord community that we have. Um, and yeah, I think very last remark, definitely make sure if you're doing this research, make sure that you're truly, truly genuine and truly passionate. I think that's what matters the most. If you get any sort of internship, I think it's really, really important to set a good first impression and to you really have to make sure your heart is in it. And then because if you're not, it's kind of like easy for people to tell. And if it's somebody who just wants to do it for their resume or just isn't actually too passionate about the topic, I think that really shows. And professors and people who are giving others those opportunities can really see that. So definitely make sure you invest the time into delving deeper into the field yourself, and then besides looking for these various opportunities and really making sure you're genuine and passionate. This is definitely something that you want to do.
Yeah, and I'll just say really quickly, they could definitely tell if you're not really interested because I went in and I had no research experience, and that was completely okay with my mentor. What she liked about me was that I was willing to learn and make mistakes and ask for help and put in the time and dedication to learn and understand what doing our research was really about. And that's what really helps you stand out. You don't have to be amazing when you first go in, but showing them that you care or that you're willing to put in the work shows them that you're interested enough and it helps you stand out a little bit better than just being there for the resume boost.
Mhm. Definitely. Um, that goes for, I think, most of the things that you probably do in life, I feel. Um, but yeah, well, yeah, thank you guys so much for okay. I see somebody reach out on LinkedIn. I do get like a lot of LinkedIn requests. So sometimes I kind of miss like approving them and stuff. So I'll go back to check definitely. I can also put my email in the chat if anyone wants to reach out. Um, but I would say if you want to reach out, definitely go to our Discord community and then at me because I do have to say, my email gets super, super flooded. Like, because I also lead like a international nonprofit, and those of you guys who already work with me know that my email is pretty flooded 99% of the time. So it does take a while for me to get back to some emails. So I definitely recommend reaching out in the Discord group community because that then other people on my team can also respond to your question, or they can also text me to remind me to answer to your question. Um, but this is also my email if anyone wants to email me. But again, my email is pretty loaded. So I think, yeah, Discord's definitely the best way. Well, yeah, I guess that kind of concludes our session. Thank you guys again so much for coming. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. And again, definitely kind of look out for our, future webinars and workshops about this. If you have any other questions, definitely reach out and stay connected. And yeah, I guess that's the end of our session. And thank you so much, Andra, for being here. I think it was really amazing that we were able to kind of do this workshop together today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back. I love being here and speaking to these people and answering questions. I think I would have definitely loved to have this when I was getting started. So thank you.
Thank you guys. Well, yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys next time. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.